Good morning. We're just giving it another moment as people are logging on. Dwayne, when you're ready, you can begin.
Okay, thank you, Maylee. I just want to check and make sure you can hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you, Dwayne.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the British Columbia Aligned Periodic Data Submittal training today. Next slide. Your trainers today are Dwayne Cook, that's me, and Deja Bell. Let's begin by reviewing WEC's antitrust policy. Next slide. All WEC meetings are conducted in accordance with the WEC antitrust policy and the NERC antitrust compliance guidelines. All participants must comply with the policy and guidelines. This meeting is public. Confidential or proprietary information should not be discussed in open session. Next slide. This webinar may be recorded and may be posted publicly. By participating, you give your consent for your name, voice, image, and likeness to be included in that recording. WEC strives to ensure the information presented today is accurate and reflects the views of WEC. However, all interpretations and positions are subject to change. If you have any questions, please contact WEC's legal counsel. Next slide. As I said, my name is Dwayne Cook. I'm a senior compliance analyst here at WEC. I'll be training along with Deja Bell, who is an administrative coordinator, as well as a subject matter expert on PDS requests. Also wanted to acknowledge our moderators today. Megan Naylor is a coordinator with our meetings and facilities team, and Maylee Cook is a training and outreach specialist with our external affairs team. We want to give you an opportunity to ask all of your questions today. During the presentation and live demonstration, we ask that you remain on mute to submit your questions via the chat feature. Megan and Maylee will be moderating that. We'll answer you as soon as we can. And we should have enough time after the presentation to open it up for you to ask questions then as well. We hope you had a chance to attend our training in March covering Align Access, self-reports, and mitigation. To make the most of our time today, we'll be operating under the assumption that you are somewhat familiar with what we covered in our initial training. For your reference, we'll add a link to that training presentation in the chat. Next slide. Today we will cover periodic data submittals in Align, or PDS, including a request for extension, RFEs, and request for information, RFIs, as they relate to PDS. We will also discuss the Secure Evidence Locker, or SEL, as it relates to PDS. Note that we will cover attestations, which is a feature in Align, after a pending update to attestation functionality is complete, so we won't be doing that today. During the demonstration, we will be in the training environment of Align. It mimics the functionality that is in the production environment. However, it will not reflect actual compliance-related data. Next slide. Here's the implementation schedule for periodic data submittals. British Columbia entities will begin submitting both event and standard-driven PDS on July 1st. WEC will send the Q2 FAT3 PDS to entities in Align on July 1st. These will be due on July 21st. That is because the normal 20-day due date falls on a weekend. Note that we are foregoing attestation submittals for Q2 PDS pending completion of that attestation functionality update in Align that we mentioned earlier. Next slide. Any new users will need to request Align permissions through the ERO portal. You can request those permissions by selecting request application access, where they will be reviewed by the entity administrators. As a reminder, CORE's registration data feeds into Align. Align notifications are then sent to your compliance contacts. By keeping your contacts in CORE's up to date, you can ensure that these emails are sent to the appropriate people. Next slide. Align sends notifications to your primary compliance contact, as well as any alternate compliance contacts when WEC requests a PDS. For security reasons, these emails are intentionally vague. Once you receive the email, that should trigger you to log into Align to review the PDS request and any instructions. Next slide. Again, updates to entity contacts must be made in CORES. Any updates to primary and alternate compliance contacts are made by the entity. If you need help on how to do that, email us at either oversight@wec.org or support@wec.org, and we can send you those instructions. Next slide. When you log into Align and click the My Align drop-down menu, you'll see options that include periodic data submittals and attestations. During the training today, we will explore the periodic data submittals view. And again, attestations will be covered at a later date. Next slide. We're going to begin by demonstrating periodic data submittals. I am going to share my screen here shortly. And I'll just check to make sure you can see that first. Okay, it looks like I'm sharing.
Yes, we're seeing your screen.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, when you first get into Align, there's this My Align drop-down menu. We're on the periodic data submittals tab. You can see it lands on this active PDS requests tab first. You receive a PDS request in Align, this is where you'll see it. We have prepared a few demonstration scenarios that show how periodic data submittals work in Align. I'm showing you the entity view here. And again, we're in the training environment. And Deja is logged into the training environment as the Compliance Enforcement Authority, or CEA. So we can demonstrate the interaction between the CEA and the entity for the different scenarios. So I'm going to look off screen here as I do this demonstration, but we're going to start with this first PDS request. You can see the PDS ID. This one is PDS 2025-000041. When you receive a request, there's always a unique ID associated with that. You can also see that it is a link you can click to view the actual PDS request. You can also see the information summarized here along the top, including the short name, which we assigned earlier, and the other relevant information. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this first PDS request, and brings up the request. You can see here, there's a section with general information about the request, the unique ID, and so forth. The submit on or after date, which is today. We've selected a due date on this particular PDS of July 24th, and the other information, the monitoring period start date and the end date. So that's the general information. You will also, you'll notice there's a place for description of the request. That's where we'll place instructions. We don't have those in here today, but you can see where those would go. In the next section, under questions, this is where you'll see the actual PDS that we want to open and add. This is for, again, Fact 3.4. You'll see there's a link right underneath in the subject column that says click to assign. So whenever you receive these, you have to first assign it to a submitter. Your entity should have individuals who have submitter permissions assigned, and this is where you'll go ahead and make those assignments. So I click on that link first, then it gives me a updated link. It says click here to finalize. This is just the process that the line goes through to make this assignment. So I'm going to click the finalize, and it brings up this assignment screen or view. You can see here it shows the assignee. By the way, under the instructions up here, it emphasizes that only one person should be assigned here. So if you happen to have multiple people assigned, that's not going to work, and you would likely receive an error if you tried to do that. But if you were wanting to assign this to somebody else, right now it's assigned to this editor 1, you would need to click on this relate existing and go in there and make an adjustment to assign, pull up the assignee that you want. In this case, this is the one that we want. PDS scope, of course, is Factory 4. And so we're going to go ahead and make this assignment. In the action section, I click on the down arrow here on the right, select assign and update. And it may take a few moments to go through this process, but just go ahead and wait for that to complete. As soon as that's done, sometimes it takes a little longer than others. Okay. So it will put us back on the main view. Now you see that the link on the FAT43 quote unquote question says click here to answer. So we'll go ahead and click here to answer. And it brings up this view with some questions. So the first question that we're going to answer is our entity an applicable transmission owner or applicable generation owner factory? And the answer is, we're going to go ahead on this particular one and just say no. In fact, what we're going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. By the way, I can save I'm going to go ahead and save draft here so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to save draft. That saves my selection. Let's say that I'm thinking no, but for some reason I'm not sure. And I'm going to need a little time to figure that out. So I'm going to request an extension on this particular PDS request. So I'm going to go down to section below. You can see that there's click here to make an attestation, which we're not going to do. So that functionality is updated and you'll be trained on that later. And we're going to request an extension. So I'm going to click on this accordion drop down here. Brings up this screen. And to go ahead and do a request for extension, I'm going to click on this plus icon. And again, as you can see, whenever there's like a link, it gives you additional information if you hover over that. So click here to create a new request for extension. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Brings up this request for extension view. And I'm just going to need a couple more days. So I'm just going to put, I'll just go ahead and put the 31st July. And you'll go ahead and put your reason for your extension request here. You'll notice down here in the action section, it's already set to send. And when I click update, this will go ahead and send the request to the CEA for review. You'll also notice that most screens have a refresh button, and here it looks like this. You click on that and you'll see the updated information for the extension request we just submitted. And you'll note that the status is requested. And so this will go to the CEA. And Deja, as we speak, is going to go ahead and review this. And I'm just going to hold here for just a minute, giving her time to go ahead and review that. And I'm just going to refresh here again until I see the status change. So on her end, she'll go ahead and pull up the request. She has to go through a bit of a process to go ahead and hopefully approve it. If she denies it.
Oh, Dwayne, I'm gonna need you to get out of the request so I can approve it.
Good point. So, which brings up another point. If I'm in here and Deja as the CEA tries to get in, then she's blocked from doing that actually. So we'll go ahead and go to this screen for just a moment and give Deja time to go ahead and review that. And while she's doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to try to get into this. I thought it wouldn't block me. It's not. Okay, Deja, go ahead and let us know when you're done with that.
Sorry, one moment. It is still locking me out of the request.
It's still locking you out. Go ahead and try now.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Should be in there.
Sometimes there is some latency. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on this particular screen, you can see the due date column over here. I'm going to go ahead and refresh until I see it change. As soon as she approves that, it should reflect in wherever that due date is referenced in the system.
It's been approved. You can refresh.
Oh, there it is. What happened was it just kind of changed the order. I was looking at the wrong one. So you can see over here, the due date is now July 31st. I'm going to go back into the request. You can see my response here is partial because I saved it. I didn't complete it out. We're going to go back down here and you can see up here in the general section, and the due date is changed now to the 31st. And if we go down to the request for extension section, we can also see that that's been approved in the region comment column, and the status also shows approved. So that's how that works. Now we're going to go back into this request and go ahead and finish it out. So again, we've replied no here, and we're going to go ahead and save this. So just make sure that as you go through and enter your responses, remember that save draft means you can go back in and edit that response. Click save, and that finalizes your response, and you won't be able to change it after that. So we're sure that no is our response. We're going to go ahead and click save. Gives us a chance to say, are you sure? I'm going to say yes. And now that response is locked in, and you can see the status is now changed to complete or completed. Now we're ready to go ahead and submit this. So we're going to go down. And again, we submitted that this was no. We're going to go down and in the action section, go ahead and click on this arrow on the right, and it gives us some options to leave this in progress, which we just leave it the same. We can submit without data, or we can submit, which means submit with data. So we're going to submit without data here. And update. When I do that, you'll notice that this PDS request now disappeared from the active PDS request tab. And because we submitted this without data, it actually does not go to review. So it won't show up on the PDS submittals tab, which is where it would go if it goes to WEC for review. It will actually show up on this completed PDS request tab. If I click on this, there will be other information here from previous trainings that I can go ahead and just show you. It's this one here on the top. We just submitted. You can see it was closed without data submission. I'm going to go back to the active PDS request tab. We're going to select our second one here. This is our Factory PDS demo number 2. And we're going to quickly go through the same process we did earlier. We're going to click to assign. Click to finalize. This looks good. I'm going to go ahead and assign it. Click update. Wait a few moments for this to go ahead and complete the assignment process. Take a drink of water while we're waiting. Okay, so this has been assigned. It's ready to answer. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. So it's the same thing that we saw before, but instead of selecting no, I'm going to select yes here, that it is applicable. And it will bring up another question. Is it an applicable TO or GO? Have you identified any sustained outages? So we're going to click no here in this case. And then I'm sure this is my response. I'm going to go ahead and save it. That brings us back to our initial view. And you can see that this now shows the status of completed. At this point, I can't change this. I can view it, but I cannot change it. We're going to go ahead and submit this. I'm going to show you something. This is something that happens from time to time, and that is there's no data associated with this one. We're just saying that no, there were no outages. But if I am not looking very carefully and I, instead of choosing submit without data, if I click on submit, you'll see it actually brings up a little reminder here that says, I have uploaded evidence related for this PDS to the, say, SEL. You'll notice here that under the evidence section, there's a reference ID for you to use when you do upload evidence to the SEL. However, in this particular instance, we selected no, we don't intend on submitting evidence to the SEL, but here we've actually selected submit. And what will happen is when I update this, instead of closing it out like we did previously, it'll actually send it for review because of the way that we submitted this. So you can see it disappeared from the active PDS tabs, but if I go to the PDS Submittal tab, you can see now this particular request is sitting waiting for WEC to review. So what we can do in this situation, we actually do have the ability to reopen a PDS request and essentially send it back to you to revise. What we're going to do here, either the entity would say, well, shoot, I made a mistake, contact WEC, or WEC could also contact the entity and say, it looks like you submitted this as no and without evidence, but it's in our review queue. We can go ahead and reopen this and send it back. And so what we're going to do is have Deja go through a process on her end to mark this for revision and send it back for us to revise. I'll know that she's done that when this, either when this disappears from my view. She has to go through a process where she actually marks a particular quote unquote question for revision, the fact 3.4. She marks that. It's kind of like a green check on her side. She reopens it.
It's been revised.
And it just, so you can see it's disappeared from the PDS Submittal tabs. And we should see it now over here on our active PDS request tabs. You notice that this is flagged by a icon here. If we hover over that, you can see it's returned for revision. So let's go ahead and show you how that works. I'm going to go ahead and click on the PDS ID, open it up. You'll see here under the PDS assignments, our initial response is there. It still shows completed. But off to the right, you can see a revised link here, flag. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. It brings up a window, and the functionality of this is still being revised. But right now, the process is to simply open up the window and then click cancel. As soon as we do that, it will reset this and open up another version of this question. And you can see here, I can click to answer. I can click here to assign again. I'm going to go ahead and click here to answer because I'm going to be the same person answering this. By the way, this initial response will still be here. You'll still be able to see it, but the official response will be this revision 1. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. I'm going to say, yes, it's applicable. And this time I'm going to say, you know what? Yes, there were actually outages. So once we select that, it brings up another set of questions or information to fill out. You can see here it's asking for the quantity, various types of sustained outages. I'm just going to go ahead and fill this in. You'll note here that it's important that you put an entry in each of these fields. If not, you'll get an error. In fact, I could show you. If I try to save this as draft, save the draft, but I would have expected to see an error come up on that. At some point, you would get an error. I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. I'm going to save this, complete it out. So now you can see, you can see the revision is now completed. And now I'm going to go ahead and submit that for review. Now let's say that I do have evidence to submit to the SEL. I would use this reference ID here to submit that to the SEL, which is a separate system from mine. And then this time when I submit, I'm actually going to say submit, because let's say that I have submitted evidence. And I'm going to click this box that I have uploaded evidence related to this PDS to the SEL and click update. So this will go ahead and send a response. And now as expected, because we submitted it with evidence, we submitted it for review. It now shows up on the PDS Submittals tab and is now with the CEA or with WEC for review. So that is That is how a standard driven PDS request goes up in a line, how we respond to it and answer to it, and send it back to WEC for either completion or for review. We have a couple of other PDS demos here. These were just spares in case we needed them. We're going to go ahead and show you how to create a PDS in a line as the entity. So again, we have different tabs here. We have the active PDS request tab, submittals tab, the completed PDS request tab. We also have a create PDS tab here. By the way, this PDS RFEs is also available too. We could have seen that request for extension earlier if we would have clicked on that tab. So I'm going to click on create PDS. And Align will provide you with the options you have for, based on your registered function, for submitting an event-driven PDS as the entity. We're going to go ahead and do a ERC22R12 PDS. In order to do this, we click on the plus tab. We'll go ahead and enter a name. This is whatever name you want to go ahead and put in. I'm going to encourage you to use abbreviated names. It'll take whatever name you want to put in there for your purposes. But abbreviated names are probably best for reference. Because even though we have a PDS name on this, it will also have a unique ID, as you'll see here in a moment. So monitoring period, I'm just going to go ahead and click today's date. We'll go ahead and put whatever description you want to enter into the box here. By the way, if this applied to, happen to apply to multiple reliability functions, you probably want to mention that here. In this case, this entity is only a GO, so that's all it applies to. We're going to go ahead and click update. What happens is you'll see down here, there's a my self-created periodic data submittal drafts section. When I click the refresh key, you can see there's a draft of this PDS that we just created down in that section. And then similar to a request that comes from WEC, you click on the unique ID to go ahead and finish adding information to this. It looks very much the same as the standard driven PDS request. I'm going to click here to assign. Here to finalize. This information looks correct. I'm going to go ahead and assign it. Just wait a few moments while this goes through the process of creating the information or pulling it in. And we'll go ahead and click here to answer. So you see this looks different than the FAQ3 one that we did earlier because there's a different set of questions. We'll go ahead and just provide an answer here. As you click through this, you'll see your options for responding. We'll just show this as an initial corrective action plan or CAP. It asks, has recording capability been restored? We'll just say yes. It asks us actually before that, it asks us what date was this discovered? We'll go ahead and put today's date. Expected completion. Let's go ahead and select the date so you can see how that. By the way, you can see how it thought I was not going to put an entry here in this box, so it's giving me like an alert. It will need some sort of text in here to be able to for us to send this. I'm going to go ahead and just make an entry, and then I'm going to save it as completed. Again, we can save it as draft. Back, edit it, or we can just go ahead and save it as a finalized response. Once this is done, it will it's back to this view. It shows it's completed. And for this particular one, we would probably go ahead and submit evidence. We're going to send that. We're going to go ahead and submit. Here. You'll also note on this particular one, since we as the entity created this one, we could also delete this at this point if we chose to do so. So even though the draft is created and the answer is complete, you can still get rid of it or delete it before actually finalizing it and sending it to you. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit. Acknowledge that we uploaded this evidence to the SEL. And then you can see it disappears from this view here. If we go back over to our PDS Submittals tab, we can see that this now appears here under this unique ID of PDS 2025 number 45. And it's now with WEC for review. Now, on occasion, as WEC goes through its review process, we may need additional information from the entity. And so we do have the capability of submitting a request for information in a line or an RFI. So we're going to have Deja go ahead and create a request for information and send that to us so we can see what that looks like. She's going through that process now. Just to show you this works, when she's done with that, we'll be able to see it in a couple of different places, but and you would also receive an email notification that request for information is pending. But if you go to this My Line, My Tasks view, again, there's a lot of information here from previous trainings. It just to kind of demonstrate the filtering functionality here. If I click on, let me click off this again. It's kind of a tip on these headers. You'll notice as you scroll over them, an arrow appears to the right-hand side, column heading. You click on that, and then there's a menu a drop-down menu that appears. And under filters, I'm just going to put PDS. And you can see, now if my tasks weren't full of information, this would be more obvious, but I can see now this RFI for PDS and submit it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. By the way, we could also access this from inside the PDS itself, but this is normally where you would go to access and respond to this. So you can see the request here. Deja's comments. She needs more information. So we're going to go ahead and respond to this. We provide a narrative response, which is required. And then if we were also submitting evidence in response to the SEL, we would use this particular unique ID, unique reference, rather, for submitting that so that it's associated with this particular RFI. So once we're ready and we've submitted whatever we need to the SEL, we have our response ready, we can save this, which would, again, just kind of save it, and we can go back in and modify it later. Or save an action, we'll go ahead and just send it back to WEC with our response. You can see it disappears from this view. We go back over here to our periodic data submittals. And if we go to our PDS submittals, we go in here, I believe, in the request for information section, down here, you can see the actual request. You can see the information associated with that. And you can see that the status is now awaiting region review. Before it was awaiting entity review. And now it's back with WEC. They'll review that. And hopefully they have the information they need. If not, they can submit multiple RFIs if needed. Go ahead and close this.
When we did get a question,
Yes, go ahead.
the question was, what happens to the data submittal form link in the previous screens?
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand the question. So the previous, when you say the previous screen and the data submittal.
Would you be okay with expanding on that question a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the question. So when you're talking about data submittal, are you talking about the actual RFI? I guess I'm not understanding. Go ahead and read the question again, Deja.
You're on mute, Deja.
My bad. Neethu said inside the assignee screen.
I'm sorry, say again.
So what happens to the data submittal form link inside the assignee screen? There was a question inside the assignee screen.
I'm just not understanding the question. I'm sorry.
Neethu, would you like to unmute and just ask your question aloud to the group?
It looks like Neethu's unmuted. You might be double muted.
You know what? I think I know what you're talking about. Okay, let me back up. I think I missed a spot here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another PDS here. Give me just 1 second. Okay, my apologies. Give me just a second to advance this to where I need to be. I'm hoping this answers the question. Okay. So, okay. So I think where the confusion is I missed. Okay, I'm going to put the capabilities restored. Yes. I'm going to go ahead and
So Neethu just
put a couple of
messaged
dates.
me and said the blue link right there,
Yes.
the data submittal form PRC 02-2.
Thanks for picking up on that. I intended to go ahead and click on this data submittal form here because as the instructions say, please also complete the following form. and submit it to the SEL. So if you click on this link, it does bring up the form for you to download. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. You can see it's downloading my downloads. And then I can go in and complete that form. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like. This is a downloaded version of the form. It has instructions on the first tab, and then the outage reporting form tab has places to enter the information you need to submit. So again, my apologies for missing that. Thanks for that question. So you go ahead and download the form, and then you go through the process of submitting it to the, okay, so I clicked on this, and you can see I did not put any information in the, what is the cap box. And so I got this error on the top here that you can see. So now I can go ahead and finish this. Okay, now, at this point, we would take the form that we filled out, we downloaded and filled out. We would upload that to the SEL using this reference ID, and then go ahead and submit it for review.
And then this form is also in the entity-driven PDS requests as well.
Okay, thank you, Deja. Okay, so if we go back over to PDS submittals, we'll now see the one that we just created. Okay, I'm just going to pause and see if there's any other questions at this point while we're still in the demo mode here. If not, then we can just go ahead and go to the next slide in our presentation.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat or any hands raised, so.
Okay. Okay, let me just catch up on the presentation here. So what we'll do here is just go through and just recap some of the information that we covered in the demo on the next few slides. So first of all, regarding standard-driven PDS requests, when you receive a request, you will select the PDS ID. When you're answering the questions, new questions will pop up for you depending on what you answered previously. You're required to complete any relevant forms or evidence, like we saw with the last demonstration that we did. You'll need to submit those through the Secure Evidence Locker or SEL. You'll need to use the appropriate reference ID that shows up in a line in order to do that. NERC has many training materials available in the NERC training library. We'll provide a link to that library at the end of the training. PDS response information is covered on pages 4 through 9 of the Align PDS User Guide and also in video 22. Next slide. If you need more time to complete a response, please submit extension requests as soon as possible to ensure enough time for review. You may submit the extension request from the Request for Extension section in the PDS, and you do this by navigating to that Request for Extension accordion that we showed in the PDS record. Provide your requested deadline and the reason for your for the need for your extension. If WEC approves the request, you will see an updated due date reflected in the system. Whatever our decision, the PCC and ACCs and any ACCs will receive an email notification from Align letting you know the result. PDS extension request information is covered on pages 9 through 11 in the PDS user guide and in video 23. Next slide. If for some reason you need to change your answers for a PDS after you've submitted, as we demonstrated, we do have the ability to reopen the request. We wanted to point out that if this is a scheduled PDS that WEC sends to you, the reopen request would show up under the active PDS request tab like you did in the demo. However, if we reopen one of the event-driven PDSs that you created, that would show up under the My Self-Created Periodic Data Submittals Drafts section on the Create PDS tab. So essentially, it shows back up where you first answered the question. You can refer to the instructions available on page 22 of the Align PDS user guide, or and also in video 28 for more information. Next slide. Sorry. A number of standards have additional data submittals that are specific to their requirements. These are typically based on the date of occurrence of specific events. We refer to these as event-driven PDS. If it is applicable to multiple functions, we request that you make a note of that effect in your submittal. After you create the initial draft, you will need to select it under the My Self-Created Periodic Data Submittal Draft section, as we demonstrated, in order to answer the relevant questions. If you need a refresher on how to create PDS, watch video 27. Next slide. Notices are sent to PCCs and alternates for RFIs, but the task is also visible on your My Align dashboard, as we showed you in the demonstration. You may click on the RFI link there, and it will provide you with the associated reference ID necessary for submitting evidence to the SCL if that's necessary. You can also find PDS RFI instructions on page 13 of the Align PDS user guide. NERC did not create a video specifically about PDS RFIs, but you can watch video 7 because responses to RFIs are fairly universal in Align. Next slide. As we saw in the demonstration, there are built-in validation rules that ensure that you don't miss entering all of the necessary information. If you attempt to submit a response without completing the mandatory information, an error message will show up at some point at the top of the screen, inform you of what you need to correct. As a rule of thumb, if you click Submit and nothing happens, scroll to the top of the screen, see if there's an error. Sometimes that's not apparent as soon as that happens. Next slide. Let me touch on just a few key points regarding the Secure Evidence Locker, or SEL. There's no direct connection between the SEL and Align for PDS, but for PDS, you'll use the reference IDs from Align when you upload your evidence to the SEL. Because you cannot see files after uploading to the SEL, you're given a manifest via email after each submission. You can find more information about the Secure Evidence Locker in the SEL portal guide and also video 17, submitting evidence to the SEL. Next slide. I want to remind you of the many resources available to you for your continued learning of Align. NERC videos and user guides are available for you to revisit PDS or any other topic areas as needed. In addition to Align, the NERC training site also includes training materials for cores and other NERC applications. For your reference, we've also listed WEC's initial training presentation from March, which includes more detailed information on Align access and also the Secure Evidence Locker, or SEL. We will also provide these links for you in the chat. Next slide. Thank you for joining the Align PDS training today. If you have questions we haven't answered or that aren't answered by the NERC training videos or user guide, please let us know. The next slide. That said, before we conclude our presentation, we'll go ahead and see if there are any other questions anybody wants to ask.
Wayne, I'm not seeing any chats or any hands raised
Okay.
so far.
All right. Well, again, we appreciate you attending this training session and demonstration. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what to expect if and when you receive a PDS request. Again, those will go out on July 1st, if that's applicable to you. And then you can go ahead and respond. And you can also refer back to this training for and associated links for additional information. Or you can contact us again at oversight@wec.org or support@wec.org. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dwayne.